Hey everyone, it's Greenbast here and doing another video for HUSNG.com, and today I am just playing one game at the $60 turbo level on PokerStars. This opponent just set me and I'm going to go through the game and discuss some of the key hands. First hand here, he min raises and decide to defend with Queen 3 suited. I think it's a pretty standard defend. Flop top pair and check to him, hoping to get a C bet out of him, and he bets 50 and I decide to flat, and turn comes another queen, and this is a pretty interesting card because obviously it gives us an extremely strong hand, but at the same time if we check here I think he's going to check back a lot of his Jack X, his 10X, and most likely he's not going to be betting his King X here, because we don't really have the read that he's a super aggressive player or anything. So I decide to lead into him, thinking that this will get the most value out of his Jack X hands, his 10X hands, aces, kings, all hands like that. I think do a little bit better by leading here. So I go ahead and lead, and unfortunately he folds here. Pretty much at versus a player that I'm completely readless with, I'm just going to play a pretty basic strategy to start, trying to get 2 out of line. I doubt that this player is that excellent of a player, given that it's only a $60 game and I've never seen his name before. Next hand here, he's taking his time on some of his decisions. I don't know if he's just a newer player or he's actually trying to think. It's really hard to say and too early right now. I decide to open ace 10 and flop king 3 with flush draw. Pretty good flop for our hand. It's pretty likely that we do have the best hand here. Just standard c bet. You can get calls from lots worse here as well. Lots of his worse ace x. His 3x will most likely just flat, which we have great equity against. Now he goes ahead and check raises here, and I think he is repping a fairly narrow range, most likely. He's probably check raising his flush draws, his kings, and then some of his bluff hands as well. And this is a spot that I'm going to be very inclined to play back with a lot, or at least kind of float in position with what's likely to be very good equity versus a big portion of his range. Obviously versus King X we are pretty crushed, but we still have a couple backdoor draws there, so it's not absolutely horrible. But early in the match, really have no reads on this guy, and I decide to just give it up here. He could be an extremely tight player, and this check raise is could be a very strong line for him. So I decided to give up to that check raise, and I don't think it's too bad. I decided to flat ace 10 out of position here, and this is a hand that definitely can 3-bet. Again, I just don't know anything about this player. I don't want to 3-bet and get jammed on and be in a really gross spot, because we are 75 big blinds deep, and generally I don't like to get in a hand as weak as this without some reads. Now, versus many players, it's a pretty easy 3-bet call, but again, just not so sure here. But great flop for our hand, and I go ahead and let him c-bet. And there's really 2 options to play this hand, really to check call down or go for a little check raise. I decided to check raise here just for a couple reasons. One, we're going to get tons of value from worse ace x, and I don't see many players jamming over us with worse ace x, so I'm not too worried about that. The hands that I'm worried about getting 3-bet here, jammed over, is going to be really flush draws and a couple better ace x and 2-pair combos. It's pretty narrow range, and I think most players are very likely to just flat their flush draws in position here and kind of let me barrel off. But there's so much value to be had here, and this could potentially shape up to be a bit of a scary board if another club comes or the board pairs. There can be a couple of those scary spots. So I decided to raise here, get some value for my hand, and I think it makes the hand quite a bit easier to play as well. So he thinks about it for a bit. Who knows if he's just posturing or what, but he decides to fold. Decides to fold to 8 deuce. He's played every hand so far, and I think it's fine to be folding the bottom of our range on the button. Versus many players, opening 100% is fine, but versus a player I don't have too significant reads on yet, I don't like to open quite 100%, more around 90. Min raise ace king pre-flop. I think it's pretty standard. I just min raise my entire range. I don't change the sizing too much, and there's definitely some merit to doing that. But decide to c-bet the 3-3-4 board here. Pretty good board for our hand. It's not likely to hit many hands here, and we even have the ace of diamonds for a backdoor nut flush draw. And this player decides to check raise here, and he's repping a really small range, and he's already checked us once before, kind of on a similar paired board, and we folded. So I think folding here is too weak. The real question is, do we want to raise again and kind of get it in here? And versus many players, I think that is completely fine. You're going to get in with lots of 5-6 and flush draws. But we are still pretty deep here, and I elect just to flat call here. So the turn comes to ace, which is looks to be a pretty good card for our hand. There is an unlikely straight draw that got there, but most of the time here we're going to have the best hand, and some of the time he's going to have a worse ace-x. He could definitely have a hand like ace-deuce or ace-5, which we are in great shape against. So definitely can't be folding on this turn. The real question is, if he leads, do we want to raise his lead, or do we want to just flat and try to keep the weaker hands in his range, his possibly 4x type hands? So he bets 200. This seems like a pretty weak bet right here, and I think he's got quite a few draws and quite a few 4x in his range here. But I don't want to raise here just in case, he's betting small with his absolute monsters. And our hand is just extremely strong here. And there's not too much I'm worried of. We don't want to be seeing another diamond on the end, is our main concern. So I decided to flat here. And the river comes another 3, which is really quite an interesting card, because it gives us the second nuts, well, more or less the second nuts, and there's really not too many hands we're worried about. Ace-X is never going to fold here to any bet. 4x is going to call us, depending on the bet size, and his draws are really never going to call here. And I do think about it here in the end, what kind of bet sizing I want to use, and I think the best option here is to go huge, because if he's thinking and he sees that all the draws missed, we could have a hand like 5-6. We could have a missed flush draw that didn't feel comfortable getting it in on a paired board. There's quite a few missed draws out there. Now, what hands are we looking to get called by? Well, potentially 4x can hero us. He could also potentially have 5-5 to kings, or a hand even as strong as that, that decided to check raise this flop and kind of give up on this river, kind of be cautious on this river, because we certainly can have some ace-x in our range. So with a hand, with that kind of hand range here, I think our range on this river is going to be quite polarized, whether it's quads or ace-x or pocket aces. So I think the best thing to do here is to just shove all in and really make him think, hey, maybe this guy's just trying to buy the pot. There's a lot of missed draws out here, and potentially get a hero call. I think we're going to get hero called a fairly similar amount if we make it like 500 versus if we just make it 1150. So I do go ahead and shove here, and unfortunately he folds pretty quickly. So I'm guessing he just had a missed flush draw. Possibly he just thought his 4x wasn't good. But I'm pretty comfortable with that shove on the river. So some stats, some HUD stats we can be looking at here is pretty much every one of his stats is 100%. He has 100% VPIP in position and out of position, and his check raise is 100%. So definitely have to start adjusting our play, looking to get it in a little bit lighter post flop. But at the same time, we're still fairly deep. We don't need to be going nuts or anything yet, or making a really spewy play. So min raise, queen jack, and on this kind of dry board, I just decide to c-bet fold, and he check raises again. So this is a player whose check raise range is very, very likely quite wide, and we probably have some fold equity when we shove over it. So definitely going to be looking to exploit that in the future. On this hand here, I'm just checking how many tables he's playing here just to see kind of why he's kind of taking his time on decisions. But we flat queen 5 suited out of position, pretty standard. He checks back this flop, and when he checks back this flop, I think he's going to have lots of ace-x, king-x, just a lot of weak hands. He could potentially check back a 7x, but when he flats here, I think we almost certainly have the best hand, but he doesn't have too many strong hands in his range. So I think betting kind of smaller here. I was debating between 120 and 150 because we want to get looked up by maybe a 9x that he backed into, maybe an under pair, possibly an ace high. There's really not that many hands we can get value from, but at the same time, I don't really want to check here because it could give him an opportunity to bluff. Plus, we missed tons of value versus 7x and 9x and ace high that can potentially hero call us. The one disadvantage to this sizing here is I think a good thinking player is going to kind of see through my half pot sizing here. If I had a really strong hand like a straight or 10x, most of the time players just naturally kind of go bigger on this river. And when you're in this spot, someone half pots it here, it's going to be a pretty profitable spot for him to jam over with really any two cards. Because this is a very scary river for most of my hands in my range. Obviously you can have king jack that was betting the draw, but most of the time we're just going to have a single queen, a 7x, and that's kind of what this half pot bet does look like. So I think this is a pretty exploitable play, but at the same time I don't think most opponents are going to be exploiting me too badly in this situation. So he thinks about it for a while. And he calls, and what does he have here? I think he shows up with pocket threes, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So pretty much what that tells us is this guy is just a complete station. There's really not a lot of bluffs I can have there. Yeah, it's hard from on that flop. He probably convinces himself that he is his hand is not too bad, considering it's hard for me to hit that board since it's paired. But at the same time, it's just a really not a call I think is very good. So this is kind of going to make me adjust my ranges quite a bit for this guy. I don't think he's going to be an opponent that I want to be bluffing all that much. But again, still there can be some profitable bluff spots, even versus a player who will call you with really under pairs to the board and really any little piece. So the next hand here, have Queen Jack, pretty standard open here. One thing to note is that he hasn't been 3-betting. So while he's been extremely aggressive, he has not been 3-betting too much. So I think it's going to be correct to open still quite a wide range. If he had a really high 3-bet, then yeah, we can kind of narrow our opening range here and 4-bet him a bit lighter. But since he's not 3-betting, definitely just want to be seeing lots of flops, especially with hands like Queen Jack, where they're going to be incredibly easy to play for someone who so far appears to have about 100% out of position calling range. So pretty good flop for our hand. Flop open-ender and 2 overs, and decide to c-bet just half pot like we've been doing, and kind of hope that he check raises us here, because, well, his get it in range, we're likely behind. Seeing as he's check raises every single flop so far, I think that it is fair to assume that we're going to have some fold equity here. And plus, no matter what he has, we're in pretty good shape. Obviously, if he has a spade draw, that doesn't make us too happy. But even if he has a hand like, ace 10 or something, we're doing pretty good versus the majority of his range. And when we just put in a handful of bluffs here, this shove's going to be extremely profitable. So he folds very quickly, and that's kind of interesting because generally most players, when they check raise a board that's coordinated like this, they don't fold, because you're going to be priced in with so many different hands once he puts that much money in. So it makes me think that this guy is really not really thinking very much. He just thinks, hey, I can win every pot with aggression, and this is going to work good. It'd be interesting to see what he folded. I'm guessing it was just complete air, because even if he's got 9x, there's probably enough draws in my range when I shove over there that he can't raise fold a hand like that, or at least he shouldn't be. So at this point, I don't have that high of an opinion of this guy's play, and I'm just looking to get some value. And if we look at all of his stats, he's still raising 100%, playing almost every hand out of position. Now he has folded one. And although we're only 14 hands into the match, definitely can make some pretty good assumptions on his play. So 16, 17 big blinds here. I min raise King 10 offsuit, and he thinks about it for a second, and he jams. And I think this is just a snap call versus opponent, because even though he hasn't been 3-betting us, when we kind of look at his other stats, raise 100%, VPIP in position 100%, out of position at 80%, we can see that he's not really shy to get chips into the pot here. It's not like, it's very unlikely that his range here for 3-bet shoving is tight at all, if we kind of just look at his other statistics. So some players at this kind of stack depth, especially in turbos where players maybe aren't as good short stack as in hypers, for some players here, their range at 17 big blinds is quite tight, surprisingly. And King 10 can be a fold versus some players. But versus a player like this, with how much chips he's been putting into the pot, almost every hand, I'm pretty comfortable calling it off here. And turns out we're correct, and he has Queen 6, and we hold. So gonna call it there for this video. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments and I will try to get back to you. Thank you for watching.